Now we're going to talk about one of the most dreaded questions that gets asked in the interview, and that is, what is your biggest weakness? Now, this is a question that I absolutely love teaching my students, and the reason for that is because students just really overcomplicate this question. It really is very simple. Think about, why is the interviewer asking you about your biggest weakness? Well, they're asking you this because they want to actually see whether you've challenged yourself in the past or whether you have recognized that you had a weakness and you've gone and tried to develop that and improve that. Let's think about breaking this down step by step. So at the beginning of your answer, give a slight introduction. So when you give an introduction, you need to discuss the fact that everyone, or the majority of people, have weaknesses, and that you are going to have strengths and weaknesses, but it's important to recognize those weaknesses and make sure that you're trying to develop them constantly. So giving a nice introduction just sets the scene for the rest of the answer. Now you have to give the example. So when you give your example, you need to actually choose an example that you have actually found yourself. So choose something that is an actual weakness. So a weakness that a lot of people talk about is being a perfectionist. Well, that's not really a true weakness. So maybe pick something, for example, the fact that you found public speaking difficult, or you at one point you found communicating with different types of people challenging, so maybe elderly people or younger children. When you talk about this weakness, try to talk about it in almost the past tense. So let me give an example. So when I was at school, I found public speaking very difficult. So maybe when I'm talking about this in the interview, I can discuss the fact that I found it challenging. I was not the best at public speaking. So do you see how I'm mentioning it almost in the past tense? So why am I talking about it in the past tense? Well, the reason for that is because now we need to talk about how we developed this skill over time, recognize this weakness. I found public speaking very difficult, and I recognized that I found it difficult, and I knew that I wasn't the best at it. So what did I do to actually improve myself? Well, I spoke to some of my teachers about it. I watched YouTube videos. I read some articles or books about how I could improve my public speaking. And I tried to develop it over time. The next and final part of answering this question is then to really show that positivity and actually turn that weakness into a strength. So right now, I'm delivering YouTube videos and online courses to students. So my public speaking skills have obviously improved over time, but that was a hard and difficult process, and it did require a lot of effort and a lot of time spent practicing my public speaking skills. However, now, actually, this weakness has now turned into a strength. Now, always be careful and be flexible. So if they ask you something like, what is your current weakness, or the biggest weakness that you currently have, don't talk about something that you are weak or struggled with 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Discuss something that you're currently struggling with, but then the fact that you are continuing to develop it, and hopefully over time you should see a rapid improvement in this weakness. Let's watch some real examples.
I can sometimes manage my time too ambitiously, meaning that I take on too many responsibilities, which in turn leads to stress. For example, last year I participated in the Young Enterprise Scheme, played rugby, ran my school medical society, and I ended up not having enough time to properly enjoy each individual role, and I spread myself too thin.
So I like this answer because they're actually talking about the fact that they took too much on whilst they were at school, and the fact that they actually show that sense of enthusiasm for taking on different activities and helping other people out. However, they could improve this answer by actually discussing how they went about improving this difficulty that they had, and how actually now they are better at organising activities and organising themselves with regards to when they use their time. So I'd say that this answer is maybe a 3 out of 5. So they could improve this answer by perhaps saying that in the future, when at university, they're going to plan and schedule their time so that they don't take on too many activities.
My biggest weakness. I tend to be a perfectionist. When I'm doing a task, I try to put too much detail and end up therefore spending too long on the task.
So again, this is a very cliche answer. They're talking about perfectionism, or the fact that they're almost the finished picture in that sense. So just make sure that you're being realistic in the answer that you're giving. It should be a real weakness to yourself and something that you have found challenging. And then again, like I said before, discuss how you've tried to improve that and how in the future, maybe that can even become your strength.
I tend to be quite bad with my decision making. So one of the things I do is if I have a task to do, I will underestimate the amount of time taken to complete it. I will think that it's a 1 hour task when in fact it's 5 hours. Because of that, I might take on further tasks and I might not complete any of the tasks or just complete a portion of them. So I run out of time or I don't complete any.
So as you can imagine, this is a very, very poor answer because they're being overly negative. Universities might pick up on the fact that you might actually struggle at university if you're already struggling with homework at school already. So like I said before, don't be too overly negative. Talk about this weakness in a slight negative light or negative tone, but then discuss the positivity or the positive side to it by showing how you're improving those skills. But again, don't talk about perfection. So now to finish off this section, we're going to talk about a quite similar question to what is your biggest weakness? And that is, can you tell me about a time where you made a mistake or you made a mistake in a team setting? So here again, the interviewer is trying to see how you deal with pressure and how you've coped with difficult situations in the past. Why are they trying to ask you this question? Well, as a doctor, you need to identify the fact that you are going to come across difficult patients and difficult scenarios, and maybe sometimes you didn't act in the most positive way, or you could have improved something about the way that you talked to a patient. So they're just trying to show, or they're just trying to explain to you how you should be talking about reflection. How do you approach answering this type of question where you have to describe a time where you made a mistake? So, like the question where you talked about your biggest weakness, you have to talk about something that is true, but also make sure that you're turning this negative into a positive and you're telling the interviewer how you went about improving this situation or improving yourself in this situation. So how did you fix the problem? What did you do? Did you ask someone for help? Did you go out of your way that evening to look up something on the internet? So discuss with the interviewer what you did to try and rectify the mistake that you made. Also, keep professional. You'd rather talk about a time where you made a mistake planning an event than cheating in an exam. And finally, because you're talking about a specific event, this might be a great time to use the STAR approach. So remember, situation, task, action, result, and reflection. So I hope that you now understand that this isn't as difficult of a question as you might have first thought. Remember, if you're going to talk about a negative event or a time where you made a mistake, either talk about it in two different ways. Talk about it in a reflective way, so you actually understood that you made a mistake, you understood that maybe you went about it in a different approach, or talk about how you actually made a difference to the situation, how you rectified the situation. So to finish off the video, let's go through an example candidate.
Last year, I was hosting a charity drive cake sale at my school during a lunchtime. On the day, I realised I had accidentally under-ordered cakes from the bakery by nearly 30%. I was quite stressed, and at the time, I didn't immediately raise it with the rest of the team. However, I thought of a solution and managed to get permission from my teacher to buy some extra cakes from the local supermarket. Even though they weren't as good quality as the other cakes, they were a decent solution. Looking back, I think the ability to stay calm is so important in those situations, as I wasted a lot of time stressing initially.